Welcome to Aaron Plays. We're now going to look at the scenario 8 from the Storming the Gap module. This one features, as I said, a German defense versus a Soviet attack. We looked at in the previous video at the counters. We'll now look at the scenario itself, the setup, and the victory conditions. So I'm going to shrink myself down so I'm no longer covering the whole of the map. There we go. Move myself to the side. So this is the vassal module that we will use. Okay, this scenario uses map 3 in the module. The terrain on the map, we have these sort of hexes here where my mouse is at the moment. These are clear. There'll be sort of partially undulating ground. Each of these hexes represents about 125 to 150 meters. Okay, these grey lines, they're roads. These built-up areas here denote town or village hexes, built-up areas, effectively. This area of ground here is cultivated, so there's fields, wheat fields, cornfields, or whatever. And this here, these are forests. Okay. Now, the scenario's victory conditions require the Soviets control both Objective A, which consists of those two hexes there, and Objective B. Why they put an Objective C on the map, I'm not too sure. That's not part of the victory conditions. Oh, and this white line around here denotes a raised ground. That's one elevation higher than the surrounding ground them. The hex symbols, as any gamer knows, that denotes the movement and helps towards movement and range and such forth. So when they say a unit's got 14 hex range, it counts 14 hexes along that grain. The terrain can block line of sight. So forest, if a unit is on this side and another unit is on that side of the forest, then they can't see each other. And the same with the hills and such forth. Again, I won't go into too much detail about those until we actually start playing. So these German forces here, there are 2 platoons of infantry, 2 platoons of transport, and the green circle denotes that is a transport unit. In other words, it can carry infantry if they wish. HQ, and 1 platoon of Leopard 2 tanks, which I did mention in the previous video, are probably the best unit in the game. Facing that, and arriving on the east side of the board, anywhere between W10 and W13, there are 6 platoons of Soviet infantry, 6 platoons of BP1s. And notice their movement value has got a blue and a green symbol in the 6. That means it can cross rivers. They are amphibious. They're slow at doing so, but they're the only unit on the board that can do so. And each one of these is a platoon, and each one can carry a platoon of infantry. So the infantry could arrive mounted or dismounted, or can arrive mounted and then dismount later. They've also got 2 platoons of T-62s, which, again, if you've watched the previous video, you'll know they're way outclassed by the Leopard 2. Okay, as I've said, I do not know which faction I'm going to play, so I'm going to set up the Germans, assuming that I will be playing them. Once I have done that, I will make a dice roll to see which actual faction I'll be playing. And with regards to the dice, if you look onto this part of the screen, this here is where all the holding boxes, dice are kept. So if I roll a single dice, I'd roll this button here, and you can see it shows me the number I've rolled. It also comes up in the display here. So if I was rolling 2 dice, I'd roll those 2. That's a result of 5, 3 dice, and so on. Now, the way the game works is it uses random activation system. This is a formation, and these are a formation. Each formation has 1 or 2 cards representing it in a draw pile. Let me bring up box, that's the wrong one. Which one is the draw pile? I'll bring it up a second. Cards. There we go. Right. So this is a different display, which I'll have on the lower screen, and I will also make it smaller. I can indeed. Right. So I can shrink that down. That's maybe a bit small. Let's put it that size and minimize it. Okay, so this display shows the turn track. There are 8 turns in this scenario. At the present moment, the weather is clear. That could change through random events. There's some NATO artillery. There's 2 rounds of anti-tank mines. The Soviets have got, this is the Soviets off-board artillery. They've got 3 lots of high explosive off-board artillery. Again, I'll go through that in detail, how that works. And this here is the formation deck. So each formation, so there's 1 Soviet and 1 NATO, has 1 card representing it, at least. In this scenario, it's denoted by the scenario notes. The Allied, or the NATO formation, West German one there, actually has 2 cards, so it has 2 chances of activating in a turn, or maybe even activating 2 turns at a time. So the way this deck works is you draw a card, and that tells you, so that would tell me that the Panzergrenadiers will be activated. Then I'll draw the next card. We would then resolve any electronic warfare. That's a random event card. So we resolve any random events. End of operations. There are 2 of these in the deck. If as soon as the second one is drawn, that would end the turn. So that would be the Soviets activating. That would be the end of operations. So the cards that hadn't been used, such as the other Panzergrenadiers, they would only have activated once in that turn. If both of those came out before the second operations card came out, they'd have activated twice in that turn. And putting all the cards back into this formation deck, it randomly shuffles the cards. So if you see, so they come out randomly. Okay, so that's how the turn sequence works. Okay, so in each turn, you'll just draw the formations and then go through a procedure of what actually happens when a formation activates. When it's an AI formation, I will be drawing a separate card of it from a deck of cards, which I have here in my hand, which I will be shuffling dependent if it's a defending deck or an aggressive deck. So if the Soviet is playing the AI, the cards in the actual deck will be different, as opposed to if the West Germans are playing the AI, which will have a more defensive deck. Each of these cards has various operations on them, and again, we'll go in more detail once we actually start to play. Let me just minimize. I'll close that part of the screen down there. So I'll now get the scenario book, and we'll go through what this scenario is actually about. This is scenario 8 and it's called, it says flipping through, Metal Rain. So in the actual book here, there's a whole blurb of what's going on, and the actual situation. But effectively, I'm going to paraphrase it. These are members of the 13th Panzer Grenadier Brigade. They're on a stretched out front. They're feeling isolated, and they decide to hold as much as possible against the Soviet onslaught. Okay, they know they've got some artillery support, but not sure how and when the Soviets will arrive. The Soviets have got, they're a red battalion, and they'll be arriving on the east side of the board between W10 and W13. The Germans set up before the game begins in the area in or south of objective B. So in or south of that objective, in or west of objective A, so in those 2 hexes or west of it, and or east of objective C. Okay. The Soviets has initiative, so that means they'll be arriving. They'll get basically a turn 0, which allows them to move on the board without any card draws, and then we will actually begin turn 1. And then the electronics warfare card is used throughout the scenario, which can block communications and such forth. So to win, the Soviets must control each objective A and objective B at the end of turn 8, otherwise the West Germans win. Okay, so that's effectively what the Germans need to do, is to hold those objectives. So I'm going to put the infantry with each infantry platoon is going to have a Milan, which is an anti-tank weapon. Okay, I'm going to put a platoon of infantry in each of the objectives. Okay, and I'm going to have them supported by one of the Marders. Okay, there's not much terrain in and around objective B where this Marder can hide or skulk. Can't go into that hex because it said south of objective B. Can't put it there because it also, yeah, it could go there, but that's in cultivated terrain, which isn't really going to give it much protection. So I'm going to stick it in the wood, giving covering over this area here. Okay. Now, as we know, the Soviets are arriving on this side, so they could arrive, but they could then go anywhere north of here, strike down this from this direction, or they could come straight forward. We don't know. If I do get to play the Soviets, I might split the force up. Again, don't know. So the best thing that could probably happen with the Leopard tank, because it is the best piece of kit that the Germans have, and they don't really want it knocked out early, but it can deal savage blows to any Soviets in a way. We need to put it so it can react to either one of those 2 thrusts. No point sticking it too far back, because we want to get as many shots off as we can with it as early as possible. And also it has a longer range than pretty much anything else on the board, in fact, than anything else on the board. So I'm going to stick it in this forest here with the HQ. With the HQ. Yes. Okay. Now, the HQ has a range on the actual card. So let me just go back to the card, turn card. So let's just pull out, explain these cards. Okay. There we go. So on this card here, it shows that it's got a range, or sorry, that number there is the morale of the HQ, 7. Higher the number, the better. This number here shows the range of communications at its best level, and that shows the range of communications if it's reduced. At the present moment, the HQ is at full strength. So it's got a range of communication of 5 hexes. Okay. Put all those back. I think I can do a right click, return to formation deck. There we go. All back in there. So as long as its units of its formation are within 5, which they all are, 1, 2, 3, 4, he's the furthest unit over here, then it knows that it can command all those units. What that means is they don't actually have to make a die roll to see if they can operate under the player's control. Or in this case, if it's the AI, under the AI's control. So everyone's in command. I think that's the setup I'm going to go for with the West Germans. So I'll now make a die roll to see if I'm actually playing the West Germans or if I'm actually going to be playing the Soviets. All right, so I'm going to roll a d6, 1d6. I roll 1 to 3, I will play the West Germans. 4 to 6, I will be playing the Soviets. And here is the roll. I will be playing the Soviets. Okay, so the West Germans are now under the control of the AI. What I will have to do for that is construct the deck of AI cards to reflect a defensive posture. And I will do that before I actually begin the scenario. So I will end this video at this point, and hopefully you will join me on the next video for the initial Soviet advance onto this map board. Thank you for watching. See you all later.